For a limited time only, get your hands on the Perca-Cola sticker pack. A link is down below. It seems like every few weeks Richtofen's morals come into question, and we can never seem to derive a good conclusion over whether or not Richtofen is a good or a bad person. And this debate was sparked yet again by the Shadow Man within Revelations when he made the bold claim that Richtofen was one of his apprentices.
You do know that Richtofen is a friend of mine. I say friend, but really he's so much more than that. At one point, I almost considered him my apprentice. I mean, he did stab my reporter friend and steal the summoning key. But at one point, he did everything I told him to. I keep hoping he'll remember the promise he made to me so long ago.
This claim for the Shadow Man contradicts everything Richtofen has said about himself in Black Ops 3. In Black Ops 3, Richtofen has said he's trying to secure a better tomorrow and that he walks a path that only he can walk. He claims he's doing everything for good, that he's not the evil maniacal self that we saw in previous Call of Duties. But is this the case, and is the Shadow Man telling the truth, or is he lying to us yet again, which he's been known to do from time to time? Personally, I don't think the Shadow Man is lying in this instance. I think he is actually talking about a Richtofen who was almost his apprentice. However, it's not the Richtofen that we play as in Black Ops 3. I almost wonder if this is a matter of getting 1.0 and 2.0 versions of our characters mixed up. Let's evaluate Richtofen 2.0. He did in fact steal the summoning key. We saw that in Shadows of Evil, and this Richtofen has even claimed to have done very bad things. However, there's a big difference between this Richtofen and Richtofen 1.0 from Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2. If I've had a dime for every time I've heard Richtofen scream about the voices in his head, I'd be a millionaire. It's one of his signature quotes. However, these quotes are strikingly absent from Richtofen within Black Ops 3. He never talks about the voices because the voices aren't in his head. They're not speaking to him like they are in previous Call of Duties. So there's a big distinction. There is this sort of evil voice whispering into the ear of Richtofen 1.0, but there doesn't seem to be a voice whispering into the ear of 2.0. We also know that it was evil Richtofen who actually went and killed the reporter from Shadows of Evil. Within Der Eisendrache, there is a cipher that when Solve reads, "I met the reporter who was to deliver the artifact. He said he was going to bring it on his on a truck in a crate. But when I arrived, the reporter was babbling and acting wildly, waving a letter in his hand telling me to stay away. The crate containing the artifact had been sealed with some ancient magic. When I told him I must have the artifact and moved towards the crate, he attacked me. I acted in self-defense, stabbing him in the chest." This cipher was written by Richtofen 1.0, the evil Richtofen that we killed at the beginning of the Giant. We know because this is written on Group 935 parchment and it was left in Griffin Castle, and Richtofen 1.0 was at one point at Griffin Castle, and because we know Richtofen killed the reporter, this must have been written by Richtofen 1.0. It was not Richtofen 2.0 who had actually stabbed the reporters, so this is where I start to think that maybe the Shadow Man is getting his Richtofen 1.0s and his Richtofen 2.0s mixed up. I personally believe Richtofen 1.0 is a much better candidate for the person who is under the influence of the Shadow Man. Let's look back to when Richtofen first went to the moon and touched the pyramid.
Why is it so dark? I feel almost weightless. How very unexpected. Dr. Schuster? Hello? There, I can see now. Oh my God! I'm standing in a circular cave, surrounded by some kind of machinery. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. It looks almost alien in nature. There's a pyramid structure in the center of the room. I'm going to try not to carefully touch it. Static electricity. It's smooth to the touch. Very cold. Might be. Hollow. The chamber is quite large. I see what looks like capacitors in the ceiling of the chamber, but there are no obvious connections to anything electrical. What is this place? Dr. Schuster? Is that you? Dr. Schuster? Look at this. It appears to be covered in some kind of hieroglyphic language. I've not seen anything like it before. Why are you whispering to me? There's no need for that. This is loose. Do you hear that? It sounds like...
It is in this scene that Richtofen first starts to hear the voices in his head, and his corruption begins. He touches the pyramid, there's a shock. Now that shock must have been some kind of dark ethereal energy. And then he starts to hear Dr. Groff, but Dr. Groff isn't in the room. The voices are in his head. We've seen the pyramid corrupt others before. In Der Eisendrache, we saw the Keeper go to the moon, interact with the pyramid, and when it returned, that Keeper was then corrupted. It was now an apothecon. And when you are corrupted and you start to hear the voices in your head, you are now an apothecon and you're under the influence of the Shadow Man. What I believe is that the voices in Richtofen's head throughout much of World at War and Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2 was actually the Shadow Man corrupting him and seducing him into doing these terrible things. And we know that Richtofen 1.0 did what the voices in his head told him to. The voices were the ones that told him to turn on Dr. Maxis, and the voices were the ones that told him that Dr. Maxis needed to be dealt with and killed. Richtofen was following orders, and he continued to follow orders from the voices in his head throughout World at War and Black Ops 1. So, to me, Richtofen 1.0 is the much better candidate for the Richtofen who was the apprentice of the Shadow Man. What I believe is that Richtofen 2.0 is not involved. He is just getting mixed up, and when the Shadow Man hopes that he remembers the promise that he made, he never actually remembers the promise because he wasn't the one who made the promise. The one who made the promise is actually dead now in the Giant because it was Richtofen 1.0, the evil Nazi Richtofen who was corrupted by the voices in his head. Now, one thing I will leave you with is this idea of promises. We're told that Richtofen 1.0 made a promise to the Shadow Man, and we know that Dr. Maxis told Richtofen that he should remember the promise that he made to him many years ago. I'm curious what you guys think these promises are, because it's weird that Treyarch intentionally made the Shadow Man's speech mirror that of Maxis, almost as if they're trying to create some parallelism within their story. I'm going to leave you with that quote. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and bye.
You swore a promise to me, Edward. It may have been a long time ago, but I am sure you will not have forgotten. You swore to follow my instructions, to comply with my every order.